Well, good morning. All right, y'all are really awake this morning. It's always good to be the first speaker in the morning like this. Pretty inspirational stuff here. Thanks for sharing that, John. I had not seen that. In fact, when you were talking about jeans in space, I got a little nervous. We were talking about clothing, and I thought, I'm not sure that's what we wanted to do with the ISS. Anyway, when we were doing this. But anyway, it is good to be here and to discuss the innovation beyond boundaries with you and talk about this modern marvel that we call the International Space Station. You know, it does give us a chance as a community to kind of have an in-depth conversation around what we're using the space station for and what kind of discovery and research we're getting to do. I want to thank CASIS and AAS for sponsoring this and really, frankly, doing a great job of pulling everybody together and continuing this dialogue. I said it at the Goddard Symposium because I thought that was Jim's last. Where'd Jim go? I've lost Jim here in this process. Over there. All right. I said at the Goddard Symposium because I was told that was Jim's last conference, and so now this is his last conference. I'm wondering, Jim, you are truly a legend, frankly, in our business, and thank you for everything you've done. I know you helped me a lot when I was in Huntsville, and we're going to miss you tremendously. So thank you very much for what you've done. You know, you heard from Kate yesterday and her groundbreaking work on orbit, and it's a wonderful example, frankly, of the unprecedented things we can achieve with the International Space Station. I really believe this was the kind of outcomes that we believe were going to happen when we built this amazing lab. I remember, specifically as I was on the shuttle program, when we finished the shuttle program and the lab was done, and we talked about all the things it's going to do. And you know, a lot of people ask you, if you go back in time, they ask you, what exactly are you going to achieve? And sometimes we just don't know, right? Sometimes we know when we get it up there, we'll see what happens. And if you think about things like genes in space, I bet nobody wrote that down in 2003, 1999, even further back. This is what we're going to do with the station. But those are the kind of things we enable by having this amazing lab. It is unprecedented, in my opinion, in human history. It's that place where scientists and engineers can test out their theories, their ideas, the imagination of our teams, right, becomes reality at the International Space Station. Sometimes that reality doesn't quite end up exactly like they thought it was to start with. So it is a place where we can study, unfettered by gravity, new avenues in medicine, materials, and technology. And it's a place where human beings have lived continuously now for 16 years, right? I mean, I love the comment someone made a couple of weeks ago that their daughter just turned 16 and was working on a driver's license, and her entire life, someone has lived in space. I think that's a pretty neat accomplishment, and I think that's something we ought to pay attention to as we move forward about that human presence in space and how important that is to what we're doing. We also bring all the benefits back down to Earth, right? These are not just for the pursuit of space. There are things that we're trying to do. And we come back to Earth with a lot of the benefits we're learning from the research and the technology. It's also our stepping stone to moving out further into space. So at this event, you know, it's a good effort here to bring everybody together, frankly, from around the world, to work toward that common goal of using this extraordinary lab that we have to help us explore beyond low Earth orbit, but also take care of us here on Earth. And I think that's very important. You know, International Space Station for us at NASA, it is that vital major first step for exploration beyond low Earth orbit. The mission objective, you know, our mission objective for a long time has been to extend human presence further into the solar system. And we use the International Space Station and the unique systems for studying, obviously, what happens to our crews and our astronauts in space, and how they respond to the prolonged exposure once they get back on Earth. And I think those are important things for us to know, because we're going to have increasingly complex operations with humans as we move further into deep space. And I think that's the value from just that particular one section. We also need to take advantage of everything that the ISS has to offer related to technologies. But think about the one-year mission, right? Think about what Scott went through and Mark on the ground. You know, these guys they're going to be data for us for a long time. For how the long-term impacts are related to being in space as we go forward. So we learn more and more about the changes to the human body from spaceflight, and we also get an opportunity to develop those countermeasures. And the countermeasures are really important, right? Not just for our crews in space, but they also actually can be addressed here on Earth for those of us that are bound to terra firma. The things that we're learning will actually bring us back more and more here on Earth. I'm sure you know, in order to realize the full potential of the capabilities, the platform is serviced by a fleet of operational vehicles, including our 2 U.S. cargo providers, Orbital ATK and SpaceX. It's a fantastic partnership that we've established, and in the next round we'll bring Sierra Nevada into the mix too, to provide the capability to the International Space Station that allows us to do all these different research technology activities we need to know. Again, I'm not sure we predicted that would be an activity that the ISS enabled back when we first decided to build this amazing lab. So, CASIS continues to amplify the range of work being done on the stations. They're doing a great job working with us as a partner, and we're working hard with our commercial partners to assure even greater access. Think about it, crew's not far behind here. We're making great progress on putting crew up there with Boeing and SpaceX. If you haven't seen the progress they're all making, if you're down at the Cape or out at Hawthorne, you ought to get a chance to go see the progress those guys are making to allow us to do even more. Once we get those folks up and running, we'll be able to get 4 crew on station and hopefully add to the research and technology that we get to do today. Because operating the station is, you got to operate it, but you also got to do the science. It is an operational lab, and the team spend a lot of time making sure it's still operating. And I think when you look forward to the interest in what the station can enable for us, and you look about the interest in this deep space exploration, just think about the new astronauts class we just announced. We picked 12 people out of over 18,000 applications. So you think about what those 12 could end up doing for us. They're going to use the station. They're going to use SLS and Orion, and they're going to be the ones that take the next steps as we move forward. And the station will be there. There'll be an orbiting laboratory that hopefully they can go to and continue to do the research that we see. We talk a lot about what's next. We're kind of a what's next agency. We're always thinking about that. But it's not only what we have planned as we go forward, but it's also what we're doing today. What are those things that are in people's imagination that we can actually turn into reality moving forward? And you think about it, the possibilities that we get from ISS, and some was mentioned, and I heard some of the comments from yesterday and the opening remarks today. ISS has actually become a pretty amazing platform for Earth observation. It's global observation and diagnostic station, as we call it, that promotes international Earth observations, aimed again at understanding and resolving the environmental issues of our home planet. It offers a unique vantage point for observing the Earth's ecosystems, both with hands-on and automated equipment. I'm sure you've seen some of the amazing images we get back, obviously, from the crew, but also the amazing images that we get back from some of the instruments that we have on board. It's just fascinating to see what we use that observatory for going further. We've also been sending more instruments to the station with our commercial partners. Things like SAGE 3, which gives us a new way to monitor Earth's protective ozone layer and documenting its ongoing recovery, and the lightning imaging sensor, which observes lightning over much of the planet. The ISS has set its sights further, though. We're looking out as well with NICER that went up that has the Sextant instrument on it. And the cool thing about these missions, I think that a lot of people don't recognize, is we've also really stepped up the robotics piece of how we do these things. And I think one of the neatest things that I've been exposed to probably lately is the fact that we take these things up in the trunk of Dragon and we take them out robotically, usually while the crew is in sleep time. And they install these things on the station, all with this beautiful orchestration of the mix of robotics and ground crew. And it's just amazing what we used to take crew time to do that we're now doing from a robotic perspective. And that's just allowing us to get the stuff on station faster and actually get the research done quicker and use crew time for what we really need crew time to do going forward. So it's pretty exciting to see just that part of it, the robotic efforts that the teams are doing. CubeSats obviously have become kind of that, I call it the next generation learning. I don't think there's a university that has an engineering org that's not building a CubeSat. You're seeing it in high schools, you're seeing it in middle schools. Heck, we launched one from an elementary school, right? I mean, but this is the way to get folks very interested in what we're doing, and having that capability off the International Space Station, again, it enables folks to get something up there pretty quickly and get an opportunity to learn what I call cradle to grave, what it's like to build a spacecraft, even though the spacecraft is a CubeSat. I was in Ireland a couple of weeks ago as part of the Paris Air Show. I went by there, saw the first Irish CubeSat, right, at the University College of Dublin. And I talked to the teams, and it was fascinating, right, because they're building this through ESA. That's where they won or were selected. And it'll fly, I think, in 2019. But what's fascinating about it was listening to these kids talk about having to go through design reviews, having to establish requirements, right? And one young lady looked at me, she goes, "They made us write our requirements down." And she goes, "That was a lot harder than we thought. We just wanted to build a CubeSat," right? But the point is, right, think about what we enabled, right, just by having the opportunity to go to the International Space Station and do that. And it was just funny listening to them talk about budget, requirements, design reviews, and I told them, I said, please don't let that dampen your enthusiasm for what you're doing. But it is part of your life, and it's going to be part of your life going forward. It's a lesson for people that are in this business that has really been enabled. And again, the fact that we can put these on one of our commercial providers and get them to space so these folks can get the opportunity to learn from that is absolutely amazing. And I just think it really gets not only the current generation, but gives an opportunity for the next generation. And again, to me, personally, it's not about the CubeSat. It's about going through the process and learning what it takes to actually fly something in space. And to John Elbon's comment earlier, I sure as heck wasn't doing that when I was 16 or 17 years old. I don't even want to tell you what I was doing, but it wasn't that. But I think those are just a sampling of the diverse activities we're using the station for. And the station's fulfilling a lot of those thoughts we had when we first conceived it, but also when we finished it and we left after the last shuttle mission. Really, the limits are our own imagination, right? I mean, that becomes the limit, is what can we imagine? And I mean that. I think there's a lot of ways to get to space. There's a lot of ways to partner with people to really make things happen. And I hope that's one of the outcomes of this conference, right, is each of you get to make new connections, introduce yourself to new people. Look for ways to get what you're working on into space. That's what's so cool when I think it was Greg said that we had over 1,000 folks. It's pretty neat. It's pretty good. That means we got a lot of interest and there's a lot of opportunity there as well. You know, it is an integral part, as I said, of our human exploration goals. And it is part of that strategy for building our knowledge and our capabilities so that we can travel to those deep space destinations that we want to get to eventually. But we are trying to establish that permanent foothold in low Earth orbit. Low Earth orbit, to me, is, if you think about it as a region, right? Today, that region is actually dominated by the International Space Station. It's the destination that we try to get to, and it's where our industry partners are really doing some innovation. Think about, you're going to hear from Bob Bigelow later. Think about the beam. Think about the things we've done just by enabling this launch industry to come up and service us. Things that I don't think we thought were even possible a few years ago, and now we're seeing it happen. And in the big picture, right, of NASA, we're doing all this in amongst several other things that we do as an agency. The science missions that we have going, you see James Webb just locked up in the chamber down at Johnson Space Center. We have to balance this human exploration and the International Space Station being part of that with the other things we want to do in the agency around science and technology and aeronautics, right? These are very important things for us going forward as an agency. And we're trying very hard to make sure that when we do that balance, that we don't do it in a stovepipe manner. You know, we're looking at the opportunities when we go to Mars. Where can we actually look at a science mission and a human exploration objective? Can we do those together? Can we leverage each other? And the reason we're doing that is because we learned that on International Space Station. That's what we're doing today. We're leveraging International Space Station not just for human exploration, but for science, technology, and research reasons. You can do it, right? And it's really amazing to see those milestones go forward as we move with the ISS and its development. It's good to see so many young folks here. I was very encouraged because I think it is about you guys. At the end of the day, we're going to all be gone and somebody else needs to be standing up here. And you guys got to pick that mantle up and you got to run with it. And our goal is to inspire you to keep that going. Keep it going. The earlier talk about I forget what she called it, but the earlier generation, I know she put an age limit on there. Some of us really feel like we're still part of your generation, but we recognize I don't hit the 35 number anymore, which is really depressing. But that's a whole nother topic we won't get into. But we do want you to take our places and create your own space program, right? I used to tell people, some of the early career hires at Marshall, I said, look, at least listen to us and then do what you want, right? But at least listen and see what we can tell you. But eventually, you're the ones that are going to make those civilization level discoveries, the game changers, the kind of things that we do as an agency and that we're supposed to do. And that's what reaching out to Mars is going to be, right? And while I talk about Mars, you wonder, why is he talking about Mars? We're talking about International Space Station. International Space Station is that first step. I mean, what we're learning on station today is going to enable us to go to Mars at some point. I mean, that's the key thing. And I worry sometimes, frankly, that when we talk about Mars or even deep space exploration, even if it's not Mars, right, we forget, we act like, well, what about station? But station is a critical piece of that infrastructure and a critical part of that process that we're going through. And it's all possible for this next generation to take over from us and make it better for us. You think about the kind of images we'll get back from station. Think about the images we'll get back from the air around the moon, and then the images when we actually land on Mars. Those are the kind of things that make this journey of discovery and exploration so inspiring for me personally. We got a lot of work to do before we hand it off to that next generation. Some of us think we're still kicking and trying to do the right thing, but we know that the next generation is ready to go and ready to take it from us moving forward. We talk today all the time about our horizon goals, right? Our horizon goals of getting to Mars. But we can't, as I said, we can't forget where we are today with the International Space Station and what it's doing for us on a daily basis. It's what's realistic for us. It's right there in our grasp, and it's what allows us to actually dream and aspire to do things. And those aspirations of today become tomorrow's realities. And when I think about the reality of what we're doing on this station right now, it's pretty amazing. But I also think about its future, right? I think about the future. We've got every country has now agreed we're going to go to 2024, at least 2024 moving forward. And I think as we think about the balance of the efforts of today's efforts and the balance of what we want to do for the future, there's an important set of considerations I think we should take into account as a community. These are considerations I think that are outside the science we do on station, the technology we do on station, the human research that we do on station, those things that the International Space Station provides for us. We must look ahead. We kind of look backwards and think about decisions we've made before, where we retired the shuttle, where we stopped Apollo, those kind of things that we've done. And we ought to think about those and learn those lessons as we talk about when we're going to be done with the ISS, whenever that is, 2024 or even past that. And those considerations that I think about they're really more policy related, right? And so I'm teeing up the next panel. I'm going to make them answer these questions because I'm going to pose a few questions for that panel. Sounded like Ann Zolkowski laughing. Anyway, but so if you look at LEO as a region today, right, and make the assumption that destination today is ISS, I'll oppose another assumption. I think we need a vibrant low Earth orbit economy. And I think we need to have that in place, and we need to think about, is that going to be there? And if the International Space Station is not there, what replaces it? Are we going to be ready, or are we going to have the capability to do that? So the things I think about are that don't have anything to do with research, science, and technology, or U.S. leadership in an international collaboration. I think we ought to think about that as a consideration for the investment that we've made. If we leave low Earth orbit without that vibrant, established economy, is that the place we want to be? Maybe it is. Maybe we'll be ready for doing that. Continuity of human spaceflight. Are the next systems, both government and commercial, ready to go? And ready to allow us to continue human spaceflight and have human presence in space so that we can say that continuity for the last 16 years continues? Or are we ready for a gap and can deal with a gap? And then there's the commercial development in LEO. I mean, we are gaining so much momentum using the International Space Station today. A lot of you in this room are part of that momentum. And it's just really exciting to see the momentum. And do we want to make sure that momentum continues? Commercial development could take this over for us, and then we'll be ready to go. But those are the kind of policy questions I look at that I pose. And where will it be done? When will others be ready? And when can we handle that off for the next destination for research, technology, and development? Of course, all that has to be balanced with the resources required to actually have an International Space Station versus the resources we want to have for the future, right? And that's the kind of policy debate I think we've got to have. And we've got to have it fairly soon because we're getting to the point where we're going to have to make decisions in our out-year budgets that consider it one way or the other. So like I said, I think maybe the next panel will have something to say about all that. We'll see. I look forward to hearing what they say moving forward. But I maintain that the work you're doing today on the International Space Station will help us ultimately address these questions. That value proposition of the space station, from the research, the technology, the things that we bring back to Earth to make it better, will be the data that we use when we have these policy questions moving forward. So please continue the great work you're doing on the International Space Station. Look for other opportunities to collaborate, other opportunities to be part of this incredible asset. And I think that's the value for today. There really are no boundaries to this journey we're on of exploration and discovery, only our own imaginations. And I applaud each of you for what you're doing here this week, what you're doing daily to keep the station running and keep the station as that valuable asset to prove what we can do. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your conference. Thank you again for being here.